evening and welcome to the Cabinet meeting of the 8th of July. Thank you to everyone here and online as well. Have we got any apologies for absence? I think we've got apologies tonight just from Simon Curry, who is on leave. Are colleagues happy for me to sign the record of decisions of the meeting of the 3rd of June?
Agreed.
Thank you. Before we move to the declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests and other significant interests, I'll ask Head of Legal Vicky Nutley to give us an overview, particularly of item 7, because this is the first time we've had an item of this nature. So Vicky, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always welcome when councillors ask for advice ahead of the meeting because it gives me a chance to know what I'm going to say. In terms of item 7 in particular, although most members here will be familiar with the person who's going to hopefully be recorded on the street name, that doesn't give rise to any interest at all. The only person who would have an interest of this evening is Councillor Prenter, obviously because of her relationship to the proposer, but that is an OSI, it's not a DPI, and there's nothing else concerning. With the other items, the standing advice applies to members as usual.
Thank you very much indeed. So are there any declarations of DPIs or OPIs? Luella.
Yes, I have an interest, as Vicky has just stated, because my husband made the application relating to item 7, so I'll be leaving the room.
Thank you very much. Any other colleague? No, that's great. Thank you. Let's move on then to questions to the Cabinet. And again, obviously, this is only the second time we've had this, so thanks to all those who have put in questions. First time tonight we're having questions from fellow councillors. That's to be welcomed, and that's great to see. And just for the wider public tuning in, the order of the questions is very important. So we will always take questions from the public relating to agenda items, or indeed from members. So you'll see that the first question is from Councillor Croser, because that's relating to an agenda item later in the agenda. We'll then take public questions, and we have 2 of those listed for tonight. Public questions do have the opportunity for a short supplementary, and I understand that Mr. Whittaker is stepping in for Mr. Ward for one of the questions, so you're very welcome. And then we will have the questions laid out for members' questions from D onwards. Just to say, any questions which are for Councillor Curry, I'll be taking tonight as well. So any members with questions, there are no supplementaries, but for the public, there are, in the same way that we have at full council. So we'll move to question A. Councillor Croser, if you'd like to come up and ask your question. And we have 20 minutes for this session. And Vanessa, because I'm answering some questions unlike last time when Alex had to do all the hard work, will wave rapidly at 19 minutes. That will give us all a signal in the room. We're probably on the last question at that point. But the 20 minutes will start when Councillor Croser starts. Over to you.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for the opportunity for members and indeed the public to ask questions at Council. My question is simple and it's stated on the form, and I'm happy to have that as read and listen to the answer.
Thank you very much, and thanks very much for your question. I'm going to answer it tonight on behalf of Simon Curry, who's away on annual leave. I think everybody would agree that if there's no mitigation anywhere in Medway and everyone remains wedded to the private car, then meeting our growth needs would result in Medway's roads grinding to a halt with the congestion it causes. Fortunately, the local plan that we passed at the most recent Special Council meeting absolutely recognised the need for mitigation, and that takes many forms, not just the highway improvements at Four Elms. In your question, you've already mentioned moving the primary school at Chatham into a more safer, sustainable location, which facilitates and encourages more parents to walk their children to school. And that would have huge knock-on health impacts, positive impacts for our young children. And that follows on from the work on the WHO Community Infrastructure Framework and liaison with the Parish Council. The plan identifies community infrastructure that will limit the need to drive on and off the peninsula. Things like a supermarket, which I know, speaking to lots of residents on the WHO Peninsula, would be very much welcomed. You know, working closely with the community, improved health provision, the community parks, including the ones that you and I were planting trees in just a few months ago, schools, community improvement to wider community facilities, providing much needed facilities on the peninsula, I say, to make sure people don't need to enter and exit, limiting those needed required movements, improving public services and employment opportunities will also assist. And we can see again from the local plan, there's clear indications of many existing Medway businesses looking to move particularly to areas like Kings North, which I think is to be welcomed. That's got a long track record of good employment. Public transport is key to the part of the local plan. It will involve new improved sustainable buses with priority measures to put a public transport option that's both effective and efficient, using electric buses wherever possible to reduce emissions. Similarly, many of the HGV movements on vehicles significantly improve because of those emissions being reduced. That will help with air quality, the ever-increasing move towards hybrid and electric vehicles, which will bring further improvements. And then finally, in terms of the physical road improvements themselves, having a plan that identifies where the growth, both for housing and employment and wider infrastructure, can sustainably go, that will help Medway set out the mitigations needed, providing the best opportunities for securing funding, much needed funding for those mitigations. Of course, colleagues will be aware one of the biggest frustrations in our term of office was taking away £170 million of improvements that could have been made for communities here in Medway, but we'll be working hard to bring further funding in. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you again for the opportunity for members to answer questions. And you'll excuse me if I go.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Enjoy being somewhere else. That moves us on to the first public question, and that's to say Terry Whittaker will be asking that question on behalf of Nathan Ward. We'll let Mr. Whittaker come down. And this will be answered by Nina when we get to the question. Terry, over to you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to raise a question with you. My apologies from Nathan for not being able to be here. My name is Terry Whittaker. I'm the Executive Pastor of St Margaret's. I'm also part of the Putting Rainham First project team. Our question is, does the Cabinet support Putting Rainham First project, which aims to secure £10 million to protect, preserve and present the heritage, arts and culture of Rainham?
Thank you for your question, Terry, and also Nathan. Just to remind yourselves, the Leader of the Council, myself, Councillor Curry, as well as Head of Culture and Head of the Town Centre, as well as Heritage team, we were there for the briefing for Putting Rainham First, which we felt was really heartfelt, came from your hearts as well. And we have also given feedbacks about how we have commended all the activities as well as your vision that you've put forward. So on top of that, the culture, heritage and the community are interwoven throughout the One Medway Council Plan. So we recognize these are the powerful drivers of civic pride, economic growth and social cohesion. So the Cabinet is proud to support St Margaret's Church's Put Rainham First initiative as it celebrates Rainham's creativity and heritage. Set within a unique and historic environment, the initiative brings people together, fostering a strong sense of belonging and helping to create a vibrant place that residents are proud to call home. Thank you for doing that. I would like to assure you that the Council officers are working closely with the project team, providing valuable guidance and support to help secure the £10 million needed to bring this ambitious and community-led vision to life. As we continue our Rainham Reimagined journey and initiative to shape the future of the town centre, community engagement has played a central role. This collaborative process has led to the development of a reflective piece that is now informing the next steps. So this work will help shape a shared vision, define a clear action plan, and explore funding opportunities. By embracing a co-creation approach, we are ensuring that this long-term regeneration project is rooted in the aspirations and needs of Rainham's growing population, creating a vibrant town centre that truly serves its community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Whittaker, would you like to ask a short supplementary question?
I've no supplementary question. I'm just grateful that the Church and the group will be reassured by your response. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and do pass on our best wishes to Nathan as well.
I will indeed.
Thank you. Our next questioner, I don't believe is here, Mrs. Williams. We'll take the question as read. I'll give a short response again on behalf of Councillor Curry. So again, always pleased to receive questions. Medway North, as some people may not be aware, is actually a joint venture, and this is a partnership between us and North nationally. We receive a proportion of the profits every year, which are derived from the commercial activities undertaken. Since its inception, the profit share arrangements has returned a dividend to the council every year. All accounts are published by the joint venture, and the council obviously also publishes its own annual budget reports, which can be interrogated and scrutinised. And I have to say, in particular, the Audit Committee and Business Support both do that, along actually with the Regen Overview and Scrutiny Committee, looking at the operational outputs from Medway North. Medway North's officers work proactively with our environmental services team, highlighting areas of need of attention. Our environmental services contracts team carry out regular street inspections across Medway, following guidance set out by DEFRA. Roads identified as unsatisfactory are raised with Medway North to attend and bring back up to standard. Residents are always encouraged to report litter and graffiti using our online e-form or by contacting our business support team on 01634 333 333, which will default to Medway North to action. If there are any specific areas which officers should be aware of, please let us know, and the team will liaise with Medway North to resolve promptly. Thank you very much, Mrs. Williams, for your question. That then leads us to members' questions. I think the next question is Councillor Hammond-Deshayes. He's not present, so again, we'll take the question as read. That falls with me as well. So just for absolute clarity, I do not expect at any point the Labour Party to set up a politically directed Department of Government Efficiency comprised of local party donors, national party donors, or indeed leaders of political parties. It's a nonsense. And what we see just in the last 24 hours is grandstanding by the new administration from down the road, the other side of Bluebell Hill. And this week their chosen enemy seems to be children of the most vulnerable nature. Last week their chosen targets were the LGBTQI plus community. The week before that, their chosen targets were Ukrainians who were enjoying solidarity and support and are now not from the leadership of the other upper tier authority in our region. So I'm very clear. Away from the GDPR consequences, the data harvesting consequences that we saw from Elon Musk with the US version of Doge, the right thing to do, and myself and Alex Patterson met with them last week, is to bring in SIPFA, the sector-led experts who have been in twice since we've had this administration, worked with us in a professional way, in a way which is respected by the local government family, and have given us good advice and guidance, good support, good recommendations to take forward, which we have done. Some of those recommendations have been difficult. So we're getting on with the job of dealing with the challenging financial circumstances we find ourselves in, not least because of the 91% cut this council had in its revenue support grant since 2010. We're getting on with that rather than gimmicks and sacking people, not sacking people, suspending people, sacking a cabinet member quicker than Liz Truss got sacked as Prime Minister. Chaos down there, good delivery of public services in Medway. The choice is very clear for all the public to see. Thank you, Councillor Hammond-Deshayes, for your question. The next question, I think, is from Councillor Spalding. Again, he's not present, so I'll go to Teresa for a response on that question. Thank you.
So I'm grateful to Councillor Spalding for his question, and I hope I can put his mind at rest that there was no conspiracy associated with the Health and Wellbeing Board discussing the local plan. Planning officers Dave Harris and Catherine Smith came along to the Health and Wellbeing Board on the 21st of November last year. They talked about the draft plan, which was being prepared at the time, and shared the same information that was available to everybody in the public during the Regulation 18 consultation phase. I wanted the Health and Wellbeing Board to understand why the plan was important, what the risks to Medway were if we continued without one, and how our partners across the health and care family of Medway could help us ensure that health infrastructure is a priority within the local plan. I also encourage members of the Health and Wellbeing Board to put in submissions outlining their anticipated needs and ideas. Minutes of the meeting are, as always, available on the Council website. At full Council, I also referred to the draft plan in the form it was presented to full Council as ready to go to the inspector, which it will be, after the current Regulation 19 consultation period. I remind Councillor Spalding that the Council under Labour's leadership has been commended for the thoroughness of our consultation on the local plan, going above and beyond the efforts made by other local authorities.
Thank you very much indeed. That moves us to question F, which is Councillor Kemp. He's present. So, Councillor Kemp, Barry, if you'd like to take a seat and ask your question. Ooh. Microphone.
Yeah, so I didn't realise quite how intimidating you lot are, but you're all smiling.
Why do you want the job? No.
Anyway, my question. For over a decade, the floral displays along the railings along the A2 in Rainham have been widely celebrated as a vibrant and welcoming gateway to Medway. This initiative, previously supported by the now defunct Members' Priority Fund, contributed significantly to the visual identity of the borough's eastern entrance. With the removal of that funding source and the subsequent withdrawal of the displays, much to the disappointment of both residents and visitors, ward councillors have stepped in temporarily, donating £1,000 to sustain these displays for 6 months. Given that these floral installations represent borough-wide asset rather than ward-specific features, and in the light of similar displays being maintained in other areas, such as on the A2 adjacent to Jackson's Fields, can the leader of the council confirm whether permanent borough-level funding will be allocated to ensure the continuation of this much-valued displays in Rainham? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. I'll respond in 2 parts. Firstly, the previous funding. And look, I was very clear, along with my colleagues, that we would be an administration of honesty, integrity, accountability and compassion. The problem with the Members' Fund, as I've referred to it in this very room in the past, it was Alan's big pocket. It was send an email. Depending on the mood, you might get a response quickly. You might get a response less quickly. You might be asked for evidence. You may not be asked for evidence. That is no way to spend council taxpayers' money. There should be a process, as there is for ward improvement funds, as you rightfully point out in the second part of your question. So I make no apology whatsoever for moving away from a funding scheme which had no rule. There was literally no rule book. It was made up as the former leader chose. That's not how this administration will run. We will have processes and procedures, and sometimes even people around this table will be frustrated by those processes and procedures, but all 59 of us will be guided by them. On the issue of funding for things within your ward which is seen more generally, certainly I can only speak as a ward councillor for formerly Chatham Central and now Chatham Central and Brompton. For a number of years, I've been really pleased to part fund, actually along with Habib, for example, when we've both had the High Street in our wards at different points, the Christmas tree in Chatham Town Centre. That definitely benefits people far beyond our ward when they're coming to see the fantastic pantos that we put on at the Central Theatre. People from across Medway and beyond are enjoying that tree. So I'm very pleased to have funded that for a number of years from ward improvement funds. We build it in, and again, one of my ward colleagues is here now. And similar happens in other parts of the different parts of the towns. So, of course, particularly if you do have a town centre in your ward, there is likely to be some additional unique pressures, and I think we all accept that. So there will be no additional funding for programmes of that nature, but I do recognise the important role that ward improvement funds play in funding schemes like flower boxes, like Christmas trees, and under this administration, ward improvement funds will continue to be there for the foreseeable future. Thank you for your question.
Well, thank you for your response, Vince. Whilst it's not the outcome I nor the residents of Rainham had hoped for, I do appreciate the clarity it brings. It appears increasingly evident that policy decisions rest less with our elected representatives and more with those who prioritise cost over community value, those who know the price of everything and the value of nothing. And this, to me, is a matter of profound concern, and I'm disappointed. And I must admit, Vince, your answer was a masterclass in deflection. Thank you.
Always happy to give a masterclass. That takes us to the final question of this evening from Councillor Wildey. David, come and take a seat. And again, this is to me, so happy to receive your question when you're ready. Over to you.
Thank you. But before I get to, well, first I would like to say thank you for taking my question, and it's nice to be here tonight. But before I ask my question, can I ask the Chief Executive or the Legal Officer, as a resident of Medway, although I'm proud to be a councillor, I would like to ask his question as a resident. Is that possible? Which would make it a public question. So.
Before you answer that, can I just, are you asking to resign from the council? That would be the only way you wouldn't be able to ask a member's question. I'm not looking for drama tonight, but I was expecting a quick meeting. But I don't think that's what you were asking for. But if you could clarify that as well, because I don't think you were resigning from the council to ask this question.
A public question, you're then allowed to ask a supplementary.
You have the privilege of being one of the 59 members, but I'm sure our Chief Executive or Head of Legal will have a response.
Sorry.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Wildey, for asking the question. You are here asking your question as a member of the Council, and therefore those rules apply. There will not be a supplementary point raised as part of that process. Thank you very much, Leader.
And I'd urge you not to resign just to ask another question. By-elections are expensive, so please go ahead.
So I'm not allowed to bring Chatham Docks or Capstan Valley into the conversation as it's not in my question.
Councillor Wildey, I think you know the answer to that question.
I think I do. Thank you, though. Now I've lost my question. Can the Leader of the Council explain why we should believe that any policy will not get reversed in the next few months?
Thank you very much for your question as a member of the Council. I'm very happy to explain why people should have confidence in this administration since we were given the opportunity to serve nearly 800 days ago now. We have been getting on with the business of supporting residents across Medway. That's meant some difficult choices because of the mess left by your previous administration. I don't blame your previous administration for the 91% cut in revenue support grant, but I do blame your government of your party, not least because of Liz Truss's chaos that she caused to the economics of this country. So absolutely, we said we'd have the lowest council tax in Kent. We continue to have the lowest council tax in Kent. We said we would absolutely continue weekly bin collections. Everyone's bins are being collected every week. And they're doing a brilliant job at doing that as well. We said we'd be delivering new jobs. We continue to deliver new jobs. We said we'd be building new green spaces. As I mentioned to Councillor Crozer, I've enjoyed planting trees at our new park for the residents of Medway. We are working hard on our hubs scheme. That will come forward before the next election. And although it wasn't a pledge, we said that more than 8,000 days of not having a new local plan, which was repeatedly not delivered, promises broken by the previous administration, we've delivered that in less than 2.5 years. I'm proud of this administration. Do we get everything right? No, because guess what? We're humans. We make mistakes. We'll accept that when we make mistakes. But absolutely, the public of Medway can have confidence that this administration is working hard for them every single day and will continue to do that. Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you very much. And talking of government and chaos.
I think we're out of time. We're at 20 minutes. Thank you very much
Just
for your
winter fuel allowance, but I'll leave you with that
indeed.
thought.
We were
you.
very happy to make sure that 60 additional residents are now getting pension credit and 1,600 residents got a bonus payment from this council. Thank you for reminding me of that. I almost forgot. Let's move on. Thank you very much.
For the pensioners that have lost 10 million.
That's fine.
Total.
Let's move on now. Let's move on. That was almost a supplementary question, which would mean a resignation, and even I don't want you to resign today, David. Not today, anyway. Thank you for coming. Thank you to all the public questions. Thank you, Vanessa, for waving rapidly, as I knew I would need to tonight, because I knew we were getting close to the 20 minutes. We will move on to the first substantive report of the night, and it is substantive, as over 150 pages. Alex, over to you for the Medway Air Quality Action Plan 25 to 30.
Thanks, Vince. I'm making up for not having any public or members' questions this time round by monopolising the agenda. And very much this item is the one that really does do that monopolising. It's a substantial report, which those of you who are still looking at it digitally will perhaps not appreciate, but there's a lot here. It's a very technical report, and it's not a report that I would, as portfolio holder, request in that format. I think that lengthy technical reports are generally to be avoided. So to make it clear why this is a technical report, it's a technical report because this is a requirement by DEFRA, by government, by central government, to provide all of this information, because it deals with a very important issue, an issue which ultimately is about life and death, not just locally, but on this planet in terms of the quality of the air that we breathe. Now, I don't propose to go into all 150 pages of this report in detail, and nor do I expect any members of the public, unless they have a particular specialist interest, to do so. But I'm really grateful to Stuart and his team that they are here to do that thorough work on our behalf and to provide the data that is required. So what I can do is perhaps give an outline of how we got here, and then I'll give way to other members, and then perhaps pick up on a couple of other points in terms of where we go next at the end. That might be a way of doing this. So essentially, this previous plan, which related to 2015 to 2020, we've been overdue this revised plan, but we're there now. That identified 3 air quality management areas, one in central Medway, one in High Street Rainham, and one in Pier Road, Gillingham. In 2017, Four Elms Hill Air Quality Management Area was added separately, and progress on that will be reported separately. So it's not an error that we are not reporting on progress on that here. That's dealt with separately. What that has meant is that over and above all of the issues of air quality in Medway, those 3 air quality management areas have really sucked all of the attention towards them. All of our efforts have been in monitoring those areas and acting to improve the picture, because they were all declared because those areas exceeded the annual mean nitrogen oxide air quality objective. The headline is, I'm pleased to report that significant progress has been made on those 3 air quality management areas. The majority of central Medway monitoring locations have consistently reported measurements below the air quality objective. However, at least 2 are still in exceedance, and others are within 90% of the target as of 2022. So the situation there is an improving picture, but we keep a watching brief. It's important that we do that. However, really pleased to report that at Rainham and Pier Road, nitrogen oxide measurements have been consistently below 90% of the air quality objective. And so, as a result, we will be looking to revoke both of those air quality management areas going forward. I suppose I do love an analogy, and I think in a report like this, it's helpful to perhaps use an analogy to make it a bit simpler. And the analogy I would use is that essentially those three areas, where the schools in Medway, they would have been, requires improvement, they would have been in special measures. What we have now are an improving picture, and they're all moving up through the assessment process and have that improving picture. But what you do when you have a school which comes out of special measures is you do not stop looking at the causes of what put you in that position in the first place. So I want to reassure members of the public that these two areas ceasing to be air quality management areas simply means that we don't have to do that extra level of reporting to DEFRA, that they are not looked at in that with a fine-tooth comb by Whitehall mandarins, if you like. But it does not mean that we stop monitoring those areas for the people of Medway, because if they have been areas of concern in the past, we have to make sure that they don't become areas of concern again in the future. So I want to reassure people that we are always striving to improve our air quality in Medway, and doing that measuring is an absolutely critical part of that. Without this data, without 150-page reports, hopefully that don't necessarily have to be brought to Cabinet each time, but these reports, which our experts like Stuart can actually analyse the detail, work with other departments in the council to look at how we actually take steps to keep going in that direction. Now, I think that's probably a good moment to pause, give way to any other members who want to contribute, and then I'll pick up on some of the things that we are gonna do going forward.
Thank you, Alex. That's a really helpful overview, and I'll take some colleagues, and I'll come back to you at the end to add those next steps. I've got Teresa first.
Thank you, Alex, and to the team that put this together. And whilst it's good news that we're able, if you like, to step down, I think this whole thing isn't just about compliance with the Environmental Act of 1995. Even if that didn't exist, we would be doing this anyway, because it's absolutely critical towards improving public health. Pollutants have a huge effect on cardiovascular disease, lung cancer, as well as the aggravation of asthma and other allergic illnesses, as it says in the report. And poor air quality reduces the quality of life. So one of the things that having this report does is that it reminds us that air quality is a very important issue. And it gives us an instructive view of the way that lots of other things that we do, like planning policy when we're planning for new developments, like all of the things that we're doing under active travel, and making sure that people have got nice places to go and enjoy good clean air, and planting lots of trees, as was said earlier in the meeting. So air quality is one of those things that's an umbrella for all of the other activities that we do to improve health and improve well-being and general quality of life. And I think it is worth having a long technical report. We might not want, as you say, always for it to come to Cabinet, but I think the availability of this information is very important for people who are interested, and indeed those who have a responsibility, like bus companies and other people, as well as ordinary people, reminding them about the impact that their behaviour can have on air quality. And I can think of allowing engines to idle. We've got a campaign across the towns now reminding people that they shouldn't do that. It really is a situation where every little helps, as the outcome of the plan proves, and we definitely don't want anything to get any worse. And because we've got a lot of development, it's worth absolutely keeping an eye on. So I thank you for all the work and your guidance on this, the importance that the report has given to public health. And I look forward to everywhere in Medway having good clean air that we can breathe, but I know that that doesn't apply right across our towns, and we need to continue to make sure that we make these improvements.
Thank you. I've got Zoe next.
Thank you. At the risk of repeating some of what Teresa said, I applaud the tremendous amount of work put into this report and the actions coming out of it. We hope to see more electric vehicles coming into use, especially buses, and must work with businesses to encourage low emissions. Air pollution causes respiratory infections such as asthma, cognitive, developmental and lifelong health issues. It threatens child health and is the biggest health risk factor which shortens human lives by more than a year, according to studies. It poses severe risks to children's health, causing respiratory infections. UNICEF views air pollution as a threat to the lives of children who should have a right to a safe, clean and healthy environment. Unhealthy air puts children and pregnant women at risk of adverse health effects and even death. It can cause serious environmental and health hazards, including fatal diseases in humans and animals, including cardiovascular disease, lung cancer and diabetes, and children exposed tend to have respiratory problems later in life. Every day, internationally, in the region of 2,000 children under 5 die because of health impacts linked to air pollution. And children are more vulnerable during the process of their development as they breathe twice as quickly as adults and take in more air relative to their body weight. They tend to breathe in through their mouths, taking in more pollutants. Hence, their immune systems weaken and respiratory tracts are more permeable. We have a duty to enforce children's rights to clean air, and urgent action is not a choice, it's a responsibility.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Tracy.
Thank you. There's some real positives in this, and it's really good to see that 2 of the air quality areas have improved to that level. And I'm really seeing a bit of what Zoe said here, that it's really good that Medway are taking seriously the impact of pollution on children's health. We've recently had mapping of the use of inhalers for asthma in children across schools across Medway, which has shown a picture of rising dependence and it being a rising concern that more children in Medway are reliant on these inhalers for the conditions that they have. And so the work that we're doing here, coupled with the work that we're doing on school streets to improve the air quality around schools when children are travelling to and from school each day during term time, is only going to have a positive impact on children's health. So it's really pleasing to see that this, married with other measures that we're taking, are leading to an improvement in the air quality in Medway. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Tracy. I can't see any other colleagues, so before I come back to you, Alex, just 3 or 4 bits from my perspective. I had the pleasure of being at the healthcare, Medway and Swale Healthcare Partnership Social Regeneration event today. Fantastic event. And one of the speakers there was Alan Stockey, who's done a tremendous amount of work, particularly in Rainham. And I would genuinely say part of the reason why Rainham is coming off that list is because of the work of Alan and his colleagues, you know, doing great work in schools. More than 10 schools in Rainham have signed up, and I think the plan is to keep rolling that out further and further to getting those key messages across. Absolutely right, this remains a priority, and it can feel a strange message, can't it, that actually this is not job done just because this is coming off of a particular list for DEFRA. It absolutely does not mean that this administration does not take this very, very seriously, in the same way that when we got a good for Ofsted, we didn't stop at that point. We're continuing the work in that way. I've mentioned Ella from Lewisham here several times since we've been in the administration. Ella in Lewisham could have been Ella in Rainham, could have been Ella in Chatham. But the work that's going on now, and I pay particular tribute to the whole team that have made this happen. Stuart, obviously the author of this substantial technical report, but actually really critical work that's happening. And Tracy is right, that stunning statistic that 600 children under the age of 1 have an asthma pump prescribed to them. 600 children. We've got a moral duty to deal with this going forward. This plan will help with that, obviously specifically around both Four Elms and the other extending air quality management place, but actually across Medway as a whole. And you know, we're very clear as an administration, school streets, for example, is a key part of that programme. I know not universally popular, but I will argue with anybody that actually if we're giving those better life chances to our youngest, that's got to be a good thing to do. And we will keep doing that, working hard, using all the tools available to us, working with our partners to get the best outcomes for the air quality for all 285,000 residents, but in particular, those 63,000 residents, and as I say, the stat I heard today, those 600 under 1-year-olds who are prescribed an asthma pump. We've got to keep doing that work for those 600 kids, if nothing else. And Alex, you're going to be leading on that. Back to you.
Thanks, Vince, and thank you to colleagues for your comments. You're absolutely on the money in terms of whether this is something that we, is one and done, or whether it is, in this case, it's a live document. This is something which is setting out a roadmap for 2025 to 2030, but it is not going to be preserved in aspic. It's something that needs to develop as new challenges arise. What it does mean is that we can move away from that sort of specific targeted outcome, that focus on those 3 areas, and hopefully start to look at the everything else, that broader approach, which allows us to then use all of the tools at the Council's disposal, such as they are, to do what we can. I think that's what is incumbent on us. It's not that we can do everything. We can't set policy for emission standards in vehicles. These things sit outside our remit. But the things that we can do that have been mentioned by colleagues, we absolutely have to focus on. So I would certainly point to Table 6 on page 73 of your pack, which sets out some of those areas that we are able to look at. And, in particular, it's things like electric vehicle charging. It's that Medway Breathe project with Alan Stockey, which you've mentioned. All of these things are jigsaw pieces which, in themselves might look a pretty, a small particulate of the greater piece, but actually together they make a great impact. I think it's important to just maintain the positivity that we can do stuff about this. We've demonstrated that in Medway. This is not terminal decline. This is actually something you can fix, and so we absolutely should. And in Medway, as the report says, air quality is generally good and in compliance with the legal concentration levels set by the UK government. But that doesn't mean that we don't strive to go further. We've got, targets for 2040 established under the Environment Act 2021 that we need to strive for. We want to lower our concentrations so that they're closer to the World Health Organization's global air quality guidelines. That stuff, again, think global, act local. We have to do that here. This is where it has to happen. It has to happen in this chamber. It has to happen at Gun Wharf and Penderhouse and all these places where our teams are working to keep Medway moving, which reduces pollution in itself. I think what Tracy mentioned about school streets is critical as well. Not so much in the specific measurement of before and after or anything like that, but on the simple basis, as we can see in the report, that the primary pollutant of concern in Medway is nitrogen oxide. That's primarily caused by traffic congestion and concentrated along roadsides. What's the common denominator? It's motor vehicles. So the only thing that's better than a more efficient vehicle is no vehicle at all. That's what we're able to do on school streets, outside school entrances at the start and end of the day. That makes a difference. No vehicle puts out lower emissions than even the most efficient. It doesn't matter if you've got a Toyota Prius or an all-electric Elon Musk mobile. That is immaterial. We absolutely want to get to a stage where we are reducing these emissions for all of the residents of Medway, because it's a matter of social justice. actually. You know, often we skip over in these reports, in 150 pages, the last 1, 2, 3, 5 of them are a diversity impact assessment. I think actually, if you want a justification for the why we do this, it's in those last 5 pages. It's in the diversity impact assessment. And when you look at the groups where this advances equality under the protected characteristics of age and disability and low-income groups, those are the people who benefit most from the improvements that we can make on plans like this. That's the reason that I am involved in politics. It's to stand up for those who aren't able to stand up for themselves necessarily. It's to punch upward on their behalf, to make demands of those who are capable of changing their behaviour, and to do everything that we possibly can in Medway to ensure that there is no repeat of the horror of what happened to that little girl in Lewisham. That's not something that any of us want. There's a lot of talk in politics, and there's a lot of mouthing off about leaving debts to our grandchildren, and we mustn't do this to leave debts to our children and grandchildren. Well, money's one thing. Money sorts itself out in the long run, I would suggest. But what I don't want to bequeath to my grandchildren is an environment where they are growing up with inhaler dependency, in a world where we have scarcity of not just water resources, which is a given, but that we are actually struggling for clean air to breathe. That's the sort of legacy that we need to be thinking about. And the people that try to invoke the sort of spectre of what we might leave to our grandchildren are also the same people who often don't give two hoots about issues like air quality. And so I would say to them, you're wrong. Medway's right, Medway's getting it right, and Medway is getting better.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Our colleagues happy to recommend, accept the recommendations as laid out in the report. Thank you. And congratulations to everyone involved in that really important report. And again, absolutely recognising the work won't stop. Very, very clear, the work won't stop. Let's move on to the next item. Item 6 sits with me, and this is the Medway Armed Forces Partnership Board. This is a new proposed board that we can create tonight. It's an executive function, so we can create that tonight. Colleagues around the table will be aware of our fantastic armed forces history, past, present and future. And it is absolutely part of, as I often say, within the DNA of Medway. And we have lots of individual conversations. So we'll have brilliant conversations with some of the armed forces charities. We'll have brilliant conversations with our serving personnel, brilliant conversations with those who represent reservists, and of course those who play their part in some of those brilliant high public events like Armed Forces Day and the recognition we had back in May for VE Day. What we've never had, particularly in Medway till tonight, subject to your approval, is a partnership board looking at all of those different aspects as we move forward. So I want to thank Daniel Ratcliffe for his work on this. He has the ability to do everything and do everything well, so huge thank you to him. I also want to thank Chrissy Stamp, our brilliant Armed Forces champion, for everything that she does across this work, both here in Medway and as part of the Kent and Medway military-civilian partnership. This board, as you will see on page 178, there are a lot of suggested representatives on there. They're not named as yet, but we can probably guess who those individuals are likely to be. They've been key partners with us, and we look forward to working with them. The board will meet twice a year, and I think it will give a good opportunity for information sharing, sharing best practice, raising awareness. Perhaps if individual charities have got a specific focus that they're raising. Again, colleagues who were with me at the LGA conference. We had a good conversation with the Royal British Legion. Of course, we have been at the forefront of their Credit the Service campaign, and it's great to be working with them in partnership. So this is really exciting. For me, it's about embedding in the council's structures that partnership approach between the council, the community, and the armed forces community, which are one and the same, but bringing them together in such a way which makes sure everyone can have their voices heard. So I'll pause at that point. Happy to take any questions. I'll go to Luella first, then Teresa, then Alex, then Nina. Luella.
Thank you, Vince, and to Daniel Ratcliffe for bringing this proposal, as well as to Councillor Chrissy Stamp for her work as our Armed Forces champion. I'm very proud that we in Medway are continuing to deliver the Armed Forces Covenant to a gold standard, and I'm delighted with this proposal to form a new Armed Forces Partnership Board. My father, as you know, joined the British Army from Fiji in the 60s, and I can say serving in the Armed Forces was a great honour for him, as it was for most servicemen and women, and continues to be. And this service will give, the service they give our nation and the opportunities and support we offer those who have served and their families should not be negatively affected by their services. And the Covenant and this Partnership Board will continue the good work we're doing to make sure that doesn't happen. The localised board will help focus the Armed Forces community here in Medway and highlight any challenges and help us focus on solutions and the appropriate, correct solutions for those who live in Medway. So I fully support the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Luella. Teresa.
Yeah, full support from me too. I think the good thing about having the board will be that the armed forces of today have a voice. That we can speak very directly to the community. They can bring things to the board. They can tell us whether they feel that the Covenant is working for them, or indeed that anything needs changing, because as with all sections out of our community, expectations about the armed forces are changing. We've heard from RSME particularly about the different ways of doing things that they have adopted now, indeed about the way that people can join and leave and rejoin. All of these things are being modernised, and I think it's really important for us to keep up to date with that. And so that conduit of communication, that additional status for the armed forces community themselves as being part of the Covenant with a say in what's happening, I think is really crucial. So I welcome this, and I think it will modernise our approach to the Armed Forces Covenant, as the government has asked us to do, and help us to have a very direct line into whether the things that we're doing through the Covenant are actually working for that community.
Thank you very much. Alex?
Thanks, Vince. As you would imagine, I am also supportive of this as former Armed Forces champion and Chrissy's predecessor. This is something that I can genuinely see the value of. I think what's also really important to remind people of is where Cabinet responsibility for the Armed Forces Covenant lies, and that lies with yourself as leader. And I know that outside of Cabinet, as Armed Forces champion, I always felt confident and proud that the leader stood four square behind me as Armed Forces champion. And I know that Chrissy has that support as well. It was my great privilege at Armed Forces Day at the historic dockyard Chatham to watch all of the formal displays, but actually the bit of the day that I enjoyed the most was when myself and Chrissy's counterpart in Kent, Canon Peter Brunvels, the Armed Forces champion there, had a wander into the area where veterans were enjoying a lunch, and we were able to sit down and chat to some of them. And I really enjoyed conversations that I had, particularly with veterans from the Royal Tank Regiment. And I think that's something to remember, that in amongst the sort of present day loyalties which we have in Medway with the Royal Engineers, with the Tigers, that we have those current connections, but there are actually those historical links, these regiments which recruited heavily from this area and which still have significant veteran populations, all of whom have specific needs. You can imagine that anyone that was operating in a tank probably these days might have some impact on the quality of their hearing. These are the sort of things that we have to support our veteran community through, and we do that through veteran-friendly GP practices and all of those things that we can signpost to. And that was the other thing that was a great pleasure, was actually suggesting things to these gentlemen who hadn't heard of them, forms of assistance, support, discounts that were available to them as veterans that some of them didn't know about, and that included things like, you know, money off the fuel they put in their car. Really sort of simple things that we can do to signpost. So I think this partnership is really critical to make sure that we link up all of those things, because that's what's clear. It's not that no one was shouting about those things anywhere, but they weren't necessarily being heard by all of the different organisations, because it's a patchwork, and there's, you know, people have their tribes in the former forces community, and while they might go to Armed Forces and Veterans breakfast clubs, they still like to also meet up with their tribe, and so there's a little bit of silo working, which is the sort of the management parlance that you might use. But a partnership board will enable you to break through those silos and make sure that we're reaching all of those veterans and servicemen and women of whom we are so proud in Medway.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Nina, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Vince and Daniel Radcliffe, and also Councillor Chrissy Stamp for bringing forward this proposal. As we've heard already, Medway has a proud and historic link to our armed forces, and there is an established armed forces community here. As someone with personal links and experience as British Gurkhas Armed Forces family, I do know firsthand the unique journey, the trials and tribulations that not just the serving personnel and veterans face, but something that the families and children go through too. I can cite examples of how in a new place we have to establish networks, not knowing who to approach, and just having that little bit of extra support is so meaningful during those times. So I'm really, really happy that we are considering moving forward with the Armed Forces Partnership Board. Also, we have just recently delivered the highly successful Armed Forces Day and the very meaningful VE Day, VE 80 celebrations, to not just show our support and pay tribute to the sacrifices of our own armed forces community, but we showed that we can work in partnership with them all and our outstanding local charities and organizations under one Medway approach. I think when we delivered those really, really successful events, it also elevated our pride in place here in Medway further. And thank you to all the veterans, all the serving personnel, their senior officers, and all the other key stakeholders and partners also who took part. I do feel that as a local authority who is also signatory of the Armed Forces Covenant, there is scope for more partnership work and more thoughtful consideration for the challenges and the unique support needs of our armed forces personnel, their families, children, and veterans as well. As such, as a cabinet member who deeply respects the enormous courage, sacrifice, and contributions of our armed forces community, I fully welcome this proposal to create the Armed Forces Partnership Board and what it aspires to offer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nina, and thank you to everybody for their contributions. Yeah, 285,000 people in Medway call this place their home. The vast majority of them in one form or another have a link to the armed forces. We know even across the 59 councillors there are many who have, if not themselves, family members who have served. And I think on the next agenda item, we may be talking about a former Korean War veteran, for example. So absolutely right to recognise the history, but actually, as Alex said, it's sometimes around the really practical stuff moving forward. And I had a conversation with many of the charities, including Nina, SAFA, of course, which was one of your charities in your mayoral year. And again, I think it's about making sure that they're talking to each other about what they're delivering in Medway. That's really important. So I'm genuinely very hopeful that this new creation for Medway, something our administration is unashamedly proud of, that will deliver positive outcomes because we're getting the right people around the table. And of course, for Cabinet members, if there are things from your portfolios that you want to highlight to the Armed Forces community, of course, we'll certainly welcome guests to that board for specific items as and when they come up, no doubt about that. On that basis, are colleagues happy to agree the recommendation of creating of the partnership board? Thank you. We'll give Luella a moment just to step out of the room into the very quiet booth at the back. That moves us to agenda item 7, street naming and numbering exemption. Alex, over to you.
Thanks, Vince. So what we have here is essentially a cabinet function, which is the decision on whether we can exempt the 20-year restriction on using the name of a recently deceased person in street naming, and specifically in the case of Alderman Paul Harriott, who I'm sure colleagues will spend some time during this item telling some more of the personal history of. The reason we obviously have these processes is because it's a significant thing, and I pass no comment on the administration which approved the naming of Stalin Avenue in Chatham back in the day, but you can see the issue with why you might approach with caution the naming of a street after a recently deceased person. But I think we have a robust process which is demonstrated in this report, one that perhaps the Vatican would be taking a leaf out of in their sort of canonisation process. We've certainly had council officers who have been asked to play devil's advocate here and see if they can dig up some dirt on the individuals in question. And I'm afraid that they've not really managed to find very much at all. Perhaps a loss of temper in a meeting at one point where we can all relate to these sort of things, but actually what it points to, and to see it in black and white, is really to see a quite remarkable life, and one that is certainly worthy of recording in this way. A couple of things that stood out for me were the, as you mentioned, a Korean War veteran himself, but also fighting the corner of dockyard workers when he was part of a delegation that was sent to see the then Defence Secretary, John Knott, when Thatcher's government decided to close Chatham Dockyard. John Knott, as an aside, John Knott, you might know as the guy that sort of threw his earpiece down in the Robin Day interview that's often repeated and was described. It was in response to Robin Day describing him as a rather here today, gone tomorrow politician. Now, I pass no judgment on John Knott's particular character. We've not had the opportunity to play devil's advocate there, but what I can certainly say is that Alderman Paul Harriott was not a here today, gone tomorrow sort of politician, and there's a lifetime of service to Medway in general and to Twiddle in particular. And I think, you know, the idea that his name lives on is not just whether we make a decision tonight to exempt the street naming process and waive that time limit, because his name already lives on. The Rochester Bridge Trust set up the Harriott Engineering Scholarship in his name to support local people at the start of their engineering education. And I think, as socialists, the really important point to remember there is that is a scholarship that has been set up for pupils from non-selective schools to redress the imbalance, the opportunities that are often reserved for those in selective schools. I know that we are proud, and he was proud of that focus on pupils from non-selective schools. So his name lives on, and I hope that with your agreement tonight, it will live on in another way as well. So I'll give way to other members.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Teresa.
Yeah, it's a really nice opportunity, actually, if we were doing nothing else, to remember Paul. I miss him. And he was a modest man, but he was a feisty man too. And his determination to keep social housing on the agenda was second to none. And I think he'd be very pleased, actually, with the commitment that the government is showing to social housing at the moment, to the investment that's been put into it, and indeed locally, through our local plan, the determination that we've got to provide more social housing. And by waiving the 20-year qualifying period, it seems to me that Paul definitely deserved that. And you know, I'm not sure that a 20-year qualifying period really in modern society is appropriate anyway, but it's what we've got, and we've got the opportunity to change it. If Paul disagreed with you, he would definitely tell you over and over again, in as many ways as he could think of, because he was a passionate man. And that passion and modesty lived within him very comfortably side by side. I will often recall, when we talk about veterans, the story that he told about coming home in a very modest way from the Korean War to his mother, with nobody waiting to cheer him at the train station, walking along the streets of Gillingham, having a look around, with his mum waiting at home to put the dinner on the table after what must have been for him an incredible and, you know, very unusual experience at that time of his life. But he didn't carry it heavily, he carried it lightly and shared his memories with other people in a really positive way, and wasn't looking. At the time we were discussing the Armed Forces Covenant, that's why he told that story. He wasn't looking for adulation. He wanted to remind people that lots of other ordinary people had these experiences, and it was important to remember them. I think it's right, Alex, to say that people in Twiddle already remember Paul, and his name is well known. This is an opportunity for us to do something, not just in recognition of Paul's service, because, wow, 52 years is a long time, but also because it reminds other people that we are keen to remember the things that ordinary people in the community who happen to be have the privilege of being elected as councillors stand up for them and want them to have a good life. And I think by naming one of the parts of Lennox Wood after Paul, that will go some way towards doing that. I've thought quite hard about whether he would have liked it or not, actually. One of the things he always did was absolutely refuse to be mayor, because he wasn't somebody who was so interested in the kind of civic and ceremonial side of the council. And in a way, because he isn't here to sort of argue it for himself, it falls on us to be clear about the fact that he definitely deserved it, and I think that the people he represented in Twiddle would be very pleased as well.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Adam.
Thank you, Vince, and it is a great honour to spend part of this meeting again like remembering the life of a man who served for so many years, particularly in the Twiddle community. I recall him when I first served as a councillor on Gillingham Borough Council. Yes, this was prior to Medway Council in being, and yes, there were many tales of wisdom and like practicality that he was able to share to newly like elected councillors like myself. And yes, the like modernisation of the council housing stock and also the additions to the council housing stock, particularly in Twiddle, are testament to the man. and it is a sad loss. Until recently, I was president of the Gillingham Labour Club, he was a founding member that helped to be able to create that back in the 1960s. And the opportunity for residents in Twiddle to be able to meet in a convivial atmosphere, subject to the rules, of course, and subject to paying their dues, etc., which he was always very keen to make sure that people were doing that, to observe all those rules. And also, I do remember on one occasion when we had an AGM, and it was AGM for the Gillingham Constituency Labour Party back in the days when they were more popular meetings to attend than they are now. And I think there were 2 nominations on the list for chairman of Gillingham Labour Party, and Paul Harriott, who had previously served as a chairman of Gillingham Labour Party, and I tied for the position. So it was down to the current chair, John Lee at that time, who also served on Gillingham Borough Council, who gave it some thought and said that he would be prepared to give youth the opportunity to be able to take on the good work of what Paul Harriott had done before. But Paul and I, never looked back. We're always firm friends. He never took that badly at all, and it's an honour to be able to remember him, and for us to be seeking to dedicate his memory to basically public housing, which was always a passion of his, and it's very opportune that we're discussing this at a time that we're moving ahead with our draft local plan. And the presentation that we had last night with all the developers there, and making sure that we were talking about 106 money and other opportunities to be able to ask those developers to be able to honour the commitment for that 25% of social housing. So I think if there was ever anybody that we should waive the rules for, it should be Paul Harriott, especially as he's not around to be able to answer back.
Thank you very much indeed, Adam. I can't see any other colleagues, so before I go back to Alex, I want to say a couple of bits on this. Firstly, I remember in this very room when we granted both Paul and indeed Ted Baker the first ever alderman status of Medway. And it was a great pleasure because, of course, in Gillingham Borough Council, Paul had scrapped the alderman status there. So, again, as Teresa says, he was gracious to accept that, despite his previous history of scrapping it in another council. It is absolutely right that if you were going to name a street after Paul Harriott, it should have social housing on it, 100%. So I'm really pleased that actually the stars have aligned to make this happen, and in a way which I think he would welcome. As others have said, look, Paul's legacy lives on in hundreds and hundreds of families in Twiddle. Yeah, I remember when I posted the sad news that he'd passed, there was comment after comment as to Paul helped me get my house. Paul helped my mum and dad get the house that I'm now living in. These are, that's what a ward councillor is about. That is someone who is dedicated to their community. And as I said at the time, I'd have to serve till 2059 to serve the same length of time. And Paul was not a time server. Every year he made an active contribution, whether it was on the Tenants Association for the council, whether it is in the role of chair of the Labour group, or all the other things that are laid out within the report. I also want to thank Mark and Hazel as the existing ward councillors who have made the nomination. This is the first time we've used this exemption since the policy's been in place. And I also want to thank David Holloway. I know we all joke a little bit around this, but actually that due diligence is really important. There are some councils that name roads after existing people who are still alive. I would never, respectfully to everyone, I would never take that risk. So David Holloway doing that due diligence in the way that he does everything. His ability for looking at the detail is without question an outstanding head of data and design. So I'm really pleased that this is the first example we see of this. I don't expect we will see many, but I think everyone that does come forward And we may see a few more in the next couple of years because of the changing face of local government, of course. And every application will be looked at on its individual merit. So I wouldn't expect thousands to be coming through the door, but if there are any, perhaps a conversation with you as portfolio holder as well, Alex. I'd encourage that early conversation for anybody considering a similar approach. But again, I'm very, very pleased to be supporting this tonight. Back to you.
Thanks, Vince. Yeah, absolutely. Just important to highlight that sort of procedural aspect of this, that we do have a policy. If people want to know how to go about it, then that information is absolutely available and out there. And just also to highlight that this would normally take place with consultation with ward councillors in the area impacted, but by definition they had been consulted because Councillors Brown and Councillor Mark Prenter were the applicants themselves. So we were able to take that as read on this occasion. Yeah, just to pick up on that time delay and my reference to devil's advocate, I just had a little look there because I was pretty sure that Mother Teresa had made it to sainthood in pretty short order, and in fact it turns out even the Vatican doesn't have a 20-year rule anymore. After her death in 1997, she was beatified in 2003 and a saint by 2016, so a 19-year process, and I'm sure there are some who have made it in quicker time than that since then. So, I think it's important to have that as a guideline, but there are certainly circumstances, as we've heard tonight, where we're able to make that decision to waive those rules. Just to sum up then, I think the words of Councillors Brown and Councillor Mark Prenter, who aren't here but are able to, Councillor Mark Prenter is here but doesn't have a voice in this particular meeting. And I think, in the application, in their words, the naming of a street in his honour after his death in a community he cared for and linked to new public housing seems a fitting way to recognise his contribution to Medway and ensure future generations remember him and the principles he embodied. I think it's a legacy that, of public service, an example that we can all look to at a time when certain local authorities have councillors elected who don't even think they have to convene meetings, never mind attend them. I think that lifetime of service becomes all the more important, and we start to recognise how rare those people are and why they are worthy of this special honour. So I would urge colleagues to waive the time limit on this occasion.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. And again, once again, thank you to Mark Prenter and Hazel Brown for the initial submission. Are colleagues happy to support the recommendation? Thank you very much indeed. That takes us to agenda item 8, but we'll just wait for Luella, who obviously can't hear us where she is. Somebody's let her know. Red smoke. Item 8, Alex, back to you.
Thanks, Vince. I think on this item, I can be pretty brief because I'm sure Vicky would agree as Bhupinder's representative here tonight. This is a tidying up of the rules and responsibilities around which functions sit with the licensing committee and with Cabinet. This is something that has been brought forward following discussion with the licensing committee. I think we're all happy. So on that, I don't really think there's a great deal to say. So I would ask Cabinet to note the comments and make these changes.
Thank you very much, Alex. Technical reports, I'm not expecting any contributions. No? Okay, thank you. As the recommendations agreed? Thank you. That takes us to the final item tonight. Alex, back to you.
Thanks, Vince. Yeah, so this is a sort of a piece of work which I think is long overdue in terms of formalising some of the processes around the review of taxi tariffs, which I think I've seen in my year in this post sort of have happened for various historical and arcane reasons, and sometimes sort of strange fits and starts and moments of surprise when we get every year in December to Christmas and New Year, and remember that we've got to actually approve a different set of tariffs. So not just that sort of festive change to tariffs, but a whole manner of other matters are wrapped up in this new taxi review policy, which sets out a 2-year time frame for reviews to take place. I recognise, and you'll see from the consultation with Nigel and the MLTDA and the industry, the wider industry in Medway, while a lot of people perhaps would like that review to take place on an annual basis, there's absolutely no value in paralysing our licensing team on an annual basis for something which doesn't necessarily need that that level of annual intervention. We have to set out policies which are within the capacity that we have in our system, and the licensing team have agreed that a biennial approach is definitely the right way forward, and that will provide a regular opportunity for a review of the sort of key components of the tariff card. So obviously if you like, the standing charge and the rate, the mileage rate will always be under review as part of this process, and one other aspect of the policy. So we don't review everything every year or even every other year, but certainly the key components will be an opportunity to look at that, and also a process which will allow for an emergency review to take place if there are extenuating circumstances. Off the top of my head, I can think of the sort of situations we had. Perhaps the COVID pandemic probably changed the landscape, things which might change the economic landscape. Prime ministers who last less time than a lettuce in a fridge, causing economic chaos. That's the sort of thing that could have an impact on people's livelihoods as well. So those are the sort of things that, off the top of my head, I can think of that might be, give rise to reviews taking place in intervening periods. But otherwise, I think this gives absolute clarity not only to the licensed trade, but also to the people of Medway who rely on our Hackney carriages and private hire vehicles to go about the business. And we're grateful to the industry for all the work they do. I'm certainly grateful for the ongoing dialogue that I'm able to have with Nigel as representative of the MLTDA. I think that's a really valuable thing for the taxi trade to at least attempt to speak with one voice. Certainly there's changes that have been made as a direct result of those interventions and representations, and long may that continue. But I think it's really important that in matters such as how people earn their livelihood, that there is a clear process. As Vince spoke about earlier, this is not decisions taking place in smoke-filled rooms behind the scenes. This is a clear process set out in black and white, and people know where they stand. So I'll open up to other members.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. I think this is a very logical, sensible approach. And again, thanks to Vicky for your work on this report. Luella, please.
Thank you, Vince. Thanks, Alex. Vicky, I just want to say I'm thankful that we do have a legally licensed taxi trade here in Medway, and that we do need to be mindful of the competition from technology companies who want to seek out to operate here. And I feel we should support and promote our own licensed taxi trade to keep it for our residents who want to use a proper taxi service now and in the future.
Thank you. I might touch on that before I go back to Alex. Anybody else? I can't see anybody else. So before I come back to you, Alex, just on that point, I think we've had some helpful initial conversations with TfL. People have heard my view very loud and clear that if you want to operate in Medway, have a Medway licence. And whether that's an out-of-area licence from another licensing authority in Kent, or indeed Transport for London, if you're not playing by the rules, you shouldn't be operating in Medway. We have some of the best taxi drivers in the country. I have to say that, otherwise they won't pick me up. But I say that because it's genuinely true, and they go above and beyond every single day, particularly where we have those difficult situations as we saw over the pandemic. So I have no problem with new taxi companies opening and using technology. Play by the rules. Get a Medway licence. It's not complicated. I agree with you. Alex, back to you before we go to the vote.
Thanks, Minister. I absolutely echo those comments. It's really clear that the adage that we operate by in this administration is that you play by the rules. And I'm grateful to the overwhelming majority of our licensed trade who do play by those rules. These rules, as I say, are for them, they're for the people of Medway, for that clarity. We don't have any lastminute.com additions to the Cabinet agenda just before Christmas when we suddenly remember that Christmas happens on the 25th of December every year. That's in there now. That's an exclusive. I can exclusively reveal Christmas will also be on the 25th of December this year, and New Year's Day on the 1st of January, and that's wrapped up in this. It's all there. It's a really clear set of recommendations, and so I would ask colleagues to support the recommendations at 1.1 through to 1.2.
Thank you very much. Are the recommendations agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. That closes tonight's meeting. Have a good rest of the month. Still, we're back here at the end of July. Thank you.